Hi, everyone. Welcome to Triangle Real Talk with me, your host, Davina Ray, where we have heart-to-heart conversations with community leaders, pioneers, movers, and shakers. Today, we have an amazing person who will be sharing her story with us. She is living proof that diversity, inclusion, tolerance, and acceptance is possible in a world with divisions, and that it all must start with ourselves. She has conducted groundbreaking and pioneering research in the area of Hinduism and how its principles can be applied to understand the human mind better. She's an executive coach, life coach, speaker, and presenter, and she was the only Hindu chaplain at Duke University where she represented the Hindu religion to the student body there. In 2019, she led the Senate in the only ever milestone Hindu prayer. She is none other than Dr. Madhu Sharma. Welcome to the show, Madhuji. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Davina.
Thank you. So your parents were founders and trustees of the Hindu Society a long time ago. What role did spirituality and religion play in your childhood on a day-to-day basis?
So I spent a lot of years with my grandparents, maternal grandparents in Kanpur, Nani and Nana, and my Nana actually was a Sanskrit university principal for 50 years, for a long time. So I grew up with my Nana, who was spoke Sanskrit fluently, read everything in Sanskrit. He was a Sanskrit teacher, of the Vedic teacher. And my grandmother was my guru. So she was a guru of several hundred people, actually. So I grew up with my grandparents and my parents here, that's one of the reasons that their background was like that also. Mm-hmm. So when they came here, we moved here in 1972 to the Triangle area, to Raleigh. And there was there were a few of us, few Hindu families, but that's about it. So my father started doing puja later on because there was no pandits, there was no community, a spiritual, religious community. So my father started doing that slowly. And then, the weddings were coming. So I started officiating the weddings and things like that. But he's actually a Ph.D. in entomology and he worked for United Nations. So this was just like a side gig, actually, right? Because of the need in the community.
Right.
And so for me, that's their background. But I went to NC State back in 70s, and I'm actually a chemical engineer. And that's what I worked for several years, over 20 some years. And about 15 years ago or 14 years ago, I went back to school and did my master's in social work.
Okay.
And so I got the mental health background. So logical and analytical thinking as an engineer on one side, and then the learned about the feely touchy, the emotional part of myself with the MSW. And I decided I wanted to be an executive coach rather than going into therapy and counseling because of my business background. Mm-hmm. So I'm still a coach. I coach executives at all levels. And when I moved back, but I'd moved to various parts of the country with my husband, who I met at NC State in 70s also. And we finally moved back to this area in 2010. And when we moved back to this area, I was starting to practice my executive coaching business. And Duke at that time in 2011, beginning of 2011, Duke was looking for Hindu chaplain at the time. And Hindu chaplaincy is not a very common phrase, actually. We don't have Hindu chaplains. We do have now after 11 years, but at the time, there were a handful of Hindu chaplains in the country. And so, because of my background, because of my parents, they asked me to apply, Madhuji, please apply, because there was nobody else applying. And there were only two of us applied. And so after, the first person served for a few months and they asked me to do that. And I said, okay, until you find somebody else.
Right.
And, I guess little that I knew, I actually retired last year after working there for 8.5 years. But if I can tell you, learning at that time, because I moved here as a teenager myself, I didn't have that much background of the scholarly part of Hinduism. The ritualistic part I did, but not the Vedic part. So I went back to school to do my Ph.D. in Hinduism so I could explain it to the younger generation.
Okay.
So that's my life history in quick 3 minutes.
Very nice. So those are the experiences that propelled you towards choosing this as a career.
Well, I didn't choose this as a career. I was thrown into it, basically. And so I took it and thought, well, this is, because like similar to my father who started doing pujas and stuff, because there was a need for it in the community. And so for me, this became a need in the community to serve. And so I'm, serve in the community, spiritual care providers, so people in the hospice or whatever life challenges that they're going through. I, work with them in whatever capacity that their need is.
So for our second generation immigrant children here, young people not very well educated in the religion, explain to us, what is Sanatan Dharma?
So Sanatan Dharma is actually, it's not a religion, it's a way of life. It's a dharmic way of life. A true dharmic way of life is what Sanatan Dharma is. Hinduism, as you know, and a lot of the younger generation doesn't know, it's very new phrase actually. It's only a few 100-year-old phrase. Sanatan Dharma has been there forever. It's over 8,000 years, right? And the Vedas come from the Sanatan Dharma. Okay. And the Vedas, the 4 Vedas explain what Sanatan Dharma is. But it's all very vague because it was written way back, approximately 8,000 years ago.
Right. So tell me a little bit about that moment when you led the prayer in the General Assembly, a Hindu prayer. That was the moment, the milestone. Tell us a little bit about how you felt and what that meant for you, our community, and Hinduism, all over in this state and beyond.
So our one of the state senator is Hindu, Senator Jay Chaudhary, and there are other senators also that are not Christian. And in the Senate, there is a chaplain in the Senate, and the chaplain actually offers prayers every time they meet, right? And so, but there's never been a Hindu prayers offered there. And so Jay Chaudhary asked me one time, being a Hindu, I just thought it's appropriate that we should have, I think there's a Muslim senator there also. And so it's appropriate to have the prayers of opening prayers of all people that in the Senate. So that was one of the reasons. And being a Hindu chaplain at Duke, it was, it was officially, I'm an official chaplain. I was at the time, at least. And I guess once you're a chaplain, you're always a chaplain. So, it was an official capacity that he invited me to come in and offer prayers. And yeah, I was really touched and actually proud for myself and for the community that I was able to do that. And actually pray at the Senate of North Carolina that I've been part of since 1972, was obviously a very, grateful for myself and for my community that we were able to, first of all, do that finally, and then also joyful that I was able to do that. Right. And actually, I did again offer at the Diwali time in 2021, also went back there the second time to offer prayer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've done that twice.
And I think Diwali now is recognized as a state holiday, right? By the government.
I think certain years, not every year, but they I think decide that from
I see.
Every couple of years. I'm not 100% sure about that, but yeah.
So what was life like as the dharmic advisor at Duke, and what was your role in educating the student body? Also, did you see many non-Hindus getting curious to see what it's all about?
Dharmic advice. I was a Hindu chaplain at Duke University. They called me a Hindu chaplain. That was my title when I was hired.
Okay.
But there's no chaplaincy is not a part of Hinduism. So I kind of sort of worked with the associate dean there at the time. I said, I think we need to have a title that belongs to Hindus title. And that's how I came up with Dharmic Advisor. So it was a title that I put together and was accepted and approved by Duke, basically.
Right.
But my job there at Duke was to be, first of all, have a presence for Hindu students, have a Hinduism present at Duke. So it was not only for the students, I was actually on a chapel staff, and my office was in the chapel itself. And so it was for all the staff and faculty and everybody. So a chaplain is for everybody and anybody.
Correct.
So then for Duke, it was for everybody, not just the students, undergraduate, graduate, Ph.D. student, everybody.
Right.
So serving the complete population of Duke, actually, university. The students we would have a meditation session. We went through Gita studies weekly. We went through Satsanga. We did everything. I did all the pujas for, whatever pujas were like Ganesh Chaturthi, Diwali. And one of the things that I was able to start was starting a Diwali at the chapel, at the Duke Chapel. We started Diwali about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, actually. Yes. So it took me a long time to convince the dean, but acoustics are beautiful, wonderful. Just the sound is so beautiful in the chapel. Wow. And so having a Diwali program in the chapel was that I'm really very proud to do that, and was able to do that. And now there's another new chaplain who replaced me, Hindu chaplain, and she's continuing to do that.
Very good, very good.
We made a difference. I made a difference in being a Duke, being a Hindu representative at the university is very important. I actually also, Davina, worked at, and I still am at UNC as a Hindu campus minister.
Okay.
But that is a volunteer position. So whenever they need any spiritual counseling, coaching for students at University of North Carolina, they give me a call.
Right. That's very good to know. You've covered all the bases, Duke, UNC.
And actually NC State too, I was volunteering there too, but I did not too many students. The thing is, it's not very well known. People don't know what a Hindu campus minister or Hindu chaplain is. People don't know that. And so awareness is a big issue that we need to tackle.
Now, you studied, your master's thesis was on different kinds of anxiety and how to approach it from Vedic principles and practices. It's very interesting for modern day psychology and psychiatry because that is more based in evidence and, drugs and everything. There's a division between spirituality, religion on one side, and psychology. So where do you think religion stops and psychology begins? Because the medical community is on one side and we're on the other. How would you bring these two together? And is there any scope in the West to start an entirely new subject area related to this?
So yeah, it started already. Actually, it's been going on for a while, and my thesis was actually a doctoral thesis.
Yes.
And yes, and the book, if I can show off my book, it says Anxiety and the Vedic Wisdom. I published my thesis, and Hinduism is, Sanatan Dharma is not a religion, it's a way of life. And that's what the Vedas actually tell you what the way of life should be. So my thesis, I used anxiety because of my mental health background. I wanted to tackle that. And the solutions for anxiety that I have I did research on are from the Vedas, by the way, and so I took those, and then the scientific way of, there's a lot of research being done actually in the scientific community, in medical and science, both sides actually, the medical science as well as physics and other areas, right? So I was able to find the solutions in the Vedas, like very simply like breathing or the yoga, these type of, solutions that are very well defined in the Vedas actually. Okay. And now we're finding out that these are true with all kinds of research is being done. So I kind of brought that scientific research and I brought the information from the Vedas and I put it together. And that's what my research was. So I did exactly what you're actually asking me, if other people are doing that. And people are doing that actually. So my contribution was to prove in a way all the Vedic stuff that says makes sense, because now science is coming and saying, we approve it.
So the two are meeting.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
So you're a pioneer in this field. How can the community help you in promoting these interests further? What message would you like to give us as a community?
So, I wanted to go back and answer to your question, which will answer this question also. Again, Sanatan Dharma is not a religion. It is a way of life. Okay. How do we live our life from day to day? And so we have to religion is one, but spirituality is part of who we are. It's the yoga. How many yoga studios are there? It's not about Hinduism. It's about yoga. Yoga. It's not even yoga. It's yoga. It's mind, body, and your spirit all together is what yoga is all about. So how can you leave the spiritual part of you out, and just have your physical and mind, mind and body. But the spiritual, Hindus believe soul is a big part of who we are. And we've just left that out totally. Modern Hindus have done that. So what I'm proposing is that you can't leave that out. It is part of who you are. And the big move with the mindfulness and yoga, breathing, all that is doing it actually in its own ways in different directions. What I'm saying is that put it all together, and it's about mind, body, and soul. Look at your own spirituality. Spirituality has nothing to do with which deity, which God you believe in, nothing, none of that. Spirituality, spiritual being, we are spiritual being in this body, in this physical body, right?
Correct.
So we are spiritual being. We have to pay attention to that. We have to accept it, but we have to be aware of that, right? And that is the challenge, biggest challenge. We get so bogged down with going to this temple, that temple. So religion, in my opinion, is down here. And people say that I go to the temple, I'm very religious. Religion is only a stepping stone to become a spiritual being.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I might ask you about all this later outside the show. So if there is one thing that every Hindu can do to educate someone from the outside asking questions or someone who's curious, what's the one thing you would instruct a Hindu to do in this regard?
So the basic principle of Hinduism is that there's only one God and one God only.
Okay.
That's the Brahma. No matter what name we give. It's the Brahma over all the universe, basically, right? And that one God is actually part, I am and you are, we are all part of that God. So that's what I would tell them, that to look at people the same as you want to be treated, behave and treat other people like you want to be treated. And everybody is part of that Brahman.
Right. And so, that's what creates unity.
It is, isn't it? Because if we're all the same, no matter what we look like, how many certificates we have, how much money we have,
Correct.
It doesn't matter. We're all part of that Brahma.
Mhm.
The Paramatma, that Brahma, Paramatma, our Atma, our soul, is part of that Paramatma. And just never forget that. And that is such a special and enlightening part of Hinduism.
Right.
If we can learn to remember that, right?
Right. And pass it on.
And pass it on.
So what are your plans for yourself in the next 3 to 5 years with this?
So right now, after I retired from Duke, I'm actually teaching a course with Chinmayanand Mission Foundation, Chinmaya International Foundation, as a visiting scholar on chaplaincy. So this is the first ever, actually at this level, that they're teaching. I'm teaching introduction to Hindu chaplaincy. And I have about 51 students from all over the world. Students from Australia, New Zealand, Nepal, India, US, Canada, and all that. Over 50 students that I teach once a week. And so we will be able to give them certificate and they will become chaplains, Hindu chaplains. So when they go out there to the university, to the community, to the hospitals as practice as chaplains, they will be, it will not be a paid position for them right now because it's not quite approved by the clinical pastoral education or the association for professional chaplains and all that, but it's a certification to start, at least, because when I started, I didn't have anything. So at least we have this 2 courses that people can take and they can learn about what is chaplaincy and make the community and the universities and the military and the hospitals aware and educate them about Hindu chaplaincy. So that's my goal. I'm still actually practicing. I'm still an executive coach. So I practice that on the side. But now I'm in the process of writing a book. So
Another book.
I'm hoping to, if you know publisher, let me know. If any publishers are listening, let me know because I want that to be published. This book I published on Amazon because this is my thesis. But yeah. And
what's the next book on? What is it about?
The book is actually, it's a model that I had developed 10 years ago as part of my coaching. And it's not a religious or a spiritual book. It's more of a living a life in balance. How do we live life? I play a lot of golf. I am a spiritual person, but I play a lot of golf. I love traveling, doing all kinds of things. So living a life and enjoying the world and enjoying life, at the same time being a spiritual human being, a good human being. That's what balance is about, right? So you can have everything in the world, abundance in the universe, at the same time be a good person and have a good relationship and be a good human being. That's what Hinduism actually professes, right? So this book is about living a balanced life. And how do we live a life in balance? Not all the time, but then if you get off balance, how do you come back to balance? So that's what.
Wow. Well, I think a lot of things you've said in this show are eye-openers, for me at least. We look forward to your next book. Any dates in mind when it's do you have a timeline for this?
I'm teaching this course has actually taken 50 students, so that's a lot of work here. Okay. So maybe in the summer or fall sometime.
Okay. So we look forward to welcoming you back on the show, maybe to discuss that second book at some point when it's published.
Okay.
And thank you very much for joining us today and for your time.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Davina.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye.